58 professional matches, 50 wins, 44 knockouts. Mike Tyson was a wrecking machine who walked into the ring knowing he had already won. But on February 11th, 1990, we saw him getting his ass whooped in the worst possible way. Buster Douglas was supposed to be just another name on Tyson's record, a warm-up, an easy paycheck. No one saw it coming. Yet 35 years later, people still ask the same question: what led to the most shocking defeat in boxing history? Mike Tyson wasn't just a good boxer, he was the best. If you're in your 20s, you might not understand just how big of a deal he was back in the day. Even if your parents weren't boxing fans, they probably heard a lot about him. Tyson was undefeated, undisputed. WBC, WBA, and IBF belts all around his waist. If you were a heavyweight boxer in the late 80s, Tyson was your worst nightmare. Everyone talks about his fight with Buster Douglas, but before that shocking loss, Tyson had already built a terrifying reputation in the ring. He didn't just win fights, he dominated them.
Hotel and Casino on the Boardwalk in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Tonight, Don King Productions presents World Championship Boxing. This bout is presented with the approval of the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board. Boxing Commissioner Larry Hazard, Chairman Jerry Gormley, Deputy Commissioners Nick DeBalistrari and Lawrence Wallace. It is sanctioned by the International Boxing Federation. At ringside, President Robert W. Lee. The ringside...
Take his fight with Michael Spinks, for example. This was 2 years before Tokyo, and at the time, it was the richest fight in boxing history, pulling in around $70 million. The hype was insane, but Tyson shut it all down in just 91 seconds. That's all it took to knock out Spinks and become the undisputed heavyweight champion. Spinks was so overwhelmed, he retired right after. I mean, imagine beating someone so badly they decide to quit the sport entirely. That same year, Tyson took on Larry Holmes, and this one was personal. Holmes had brutally defeated Muhammad Ali years earlier, and Tyson wanted revenge for his idol. The 21-year-old Tyson made sure Holmes paid for it, knocking him out in the 4th round. That win made it very clear. Tyson, now the WBA, WBC, and IBF heavyweight champion.
Featured attraction of the evening, brought to you by Don King, Frank Warren's Sports Network, along with King Vision, Showtime Event Television, La Cerveza Más Fina de MGM Grand. This bout coming your way is sanctioned by the World Boxing Council. Mike Tyson! Frank Bruno!
A year later, he stepped into the ring with Frank Bruno, another tough opponent. Tyson beat him twice, once in 1989 and again in 1996. And let's not forget Mitch Green. Tyson was just 19 years old when they fought, but he went the full 10 rounds and won by unanimous decision. By the time he faced Buster Douglas in Tokyo, Tokyo had just knocked out Carl the Truth Williams in 93 seconds. His fights weren't competitions, they were executions. Nobody was asking if Tyson would win, only how fast he'd do it. But things weren't going so great for Mike Tyson outside the ring. Sadly, at some point, everything started to fall apart. His short but dramatic marriage to Robin Givens had been a disaster. They got married in February 1988, but the relationship quickly fell apart and they ended things a year later. One of the main issues was trust. Tyson believed that Givens had faked a pregnancy and miscarriage to rush him into marriage. He also accused her of having an affair with actor Brad Pitt. According to Tyson, he once caught Pitt and Givens in bed together. On the other hand, Givens said she feared for her safety and accused Tyson of domestic abuse. Their problems played out in public, making their split even more dramatic. After the divorce, Givens remarried, while Tyson continued to speak negatively about her in interviews and his one-man show, Undisputed Truth. Givens has said that Tyson's comments bring back painful memories. But that wasn't all. Tyson was also at war with his management team. And most importantly, he had ditched his longtime trainer, Kevin Rooney, the man who kept him disciplined and sharp. They had a really close relationship, but they separated in 1988. The main reason was that Rooney spoke about Tyson's personal life in a television interview. Rooney had talked about Tyson's marriage to Robin Givens, saying it never had a chance. Tyson saw this as a betrayal because he had warned Rooney not to discuss his private life in the media. Feeling hurt and disrespected, Tyson fired Rooney the next day through a newspaper interview. Rooney later sued Tyson for $49 million, claiming that their mentor, Cus D'Amato, had always intended for him to train Tyson for life. However, Tyson denied ever making a lifelong commitment to Rooney and said there was no written contract. Despite their legal battle, Tyson admitted in court that he once considered Rooney like a brother. He even thought about rehiring him until the lawsuit happened. Without Rooney, Tyson's legendary work ethic was gone, and it showed. Some fans still say that things could have gone very differently if Rooney had still been Tyson's trainer before he faced Douglas. Now, before a big title fight, you'd expect a fighter to be locked in, focused, saving every ounce of energy for fight night. But not Mike Tyson. The night before the fight, he was out in Tokyo partying with Bobby Brown, the R&B superstar. Tyson was at the peak of his fame, full of confidence, and completely underestimated Buster Douglas. With Rooney gone, his legendary work ethic had started to slip. He wasn't training like he used to, and it showed. We didn't know about Tyson's party before the big fight until 32 years later.
Who would you say is like the biggest person that you've come across that, like, you know?
That's really impressed me?
Yeah.
Mike Tyson.
Really?
Mike Tyson.
Well, why do you say that?
He's great. He's great. I think he's the greatest boxer that ever lived and ever will live. Because he's so natural. He's not the kind of fighter that has to, you know, that's constantly into working and working. You know, he's a fun kind of guy to be around. And then, you know,
when Bobby Brown finally spilled the details about that crazy night, in an interview with A&E, he admitted that he and Tyson partied in Japan right before his fight with Buster Douglas. And when he says party, he means partied hard. He said that there were over 24 girls in the room with him and Mike. But before you assume that Tyson's loss was all Bobby's fault, you should know that Tyson was already drunk before he met Bobby that night. Bobby Brown was even trying to get him to go to bed, but Tyson told him that I could beat this guy even if I didn't sleep for 5 weeks. Well, he tested that theory, and we all know how that turned out. Tyson eventually got some sleep in the ring. Bobby cried after hearing about his friend's terrible defeat, and they didn't talk to each other for a really long time after that. Tyson probably couldn't look his friend in the eye after everything that went down. But it's hard to blame Tyson for his overconfidence because most people, well, honestly thought his fight with Douglas would be just another day at the office.
I'm the best. I'm not a textbook fighter, a jab right hand. I fight to win. I do everything to win. My objective is to win, totally to win.
Buster Douglas was a 42-1 underdog. No one, literally no one, believed he had a chance. But what people didn't know was that Douglas had a real reason to fight. Just 23 days before the bout, his mother passed away. She had always believed in him, and now he wanted to prove her right. From the moment the bell rang, it was clear Buster Douglas wasn't scared. He didn't come to survive, he came to fight. Instead of backing down like most of Tyson's opponents, Douglas stood his ground, moving well, snapping his jab, and keeping Tyson at bay. Every time Tyson tried to get inside, Douglas either tied him up, sidestepped, or hit him with sharp, clean punches. He was quicker, more active, and clearly had a game plan. By the end of round 2, he even landed a crisp uppercut to Tyson's chin, something nobody expected. Tyson, on the other hand, just wasn't himself. He had moments where he landed big shots, but he wasn't cutting off the ring the way he used to. His cornermen were yelling at him to wake up, but he just couldn't find his rhythm. This was someone that barely had any sleep the night before. I mean, what were they expecting? As the fight went on, Douglas only got more confident. In round 5, he rocked Tyson with a hard right hand, and soon Tyson's left eye started swelling up badly. Here's where things got even worse. Tyson's team was so unprepared. They didn't even have an end swell, a tool to reduce swelling. Instead, they fixed a latex glove with ice water and pressed it against his eye. To make matters worse, one of his cornermen accidentally dragged his ID badge chain across Tyson's swollen face. It was chaos in that corner, and it showed in the fight. By round 8, Douglas was in full control, but just when it looked like he was running away with it, Tyson reminded everyone why he was also known as Iron Mike. Out of nowhere, he landed a vicious right uppercut that sent Douglas crashing to the canvas. It looked like the fight was over. Everyone who ever got knocked out by Mike Tyson remained on the ground. They never get back up. Until that night. Douglas was on the ground. The timekeeper started counting immediately, but the referee started a little late. Some say Douglas got extra time, maybe a second or two more than he should have. He barely got up at the count of 9. The round ended, and Tyson's camp would later argue this was the moment that should have won him the fight. But Douglas wasn't done. Smelling blood, Tyson came out swinging in the 9th round, hoping to finish the job. But Douglas wasn't letting up. He kept tagging him, and by the 10th, Tyson was running on fumes. Then came the moment. Douglas landed a huge uppercut that snapped Tyson's head back. Tyson wobbled, and Douglas followed up with a 4-punch combo that sent Tyson crashing to the mat. For the first time in his career, Mike Tyson was down. He tried to get up, but he was dazed, and the alcohol he flooded his system with the night before wasn't helping matters. Tyson was on his knees fumbling for his mouthpiece, barely able to put it in properly. The referee counted to 10. Game over. Everyone, and I mean everyone, was in shock. Mike Tyson, the Mike Tyson, was no longer the champion. Buster Douglas had done the unthinkable. In the ring, still overwhelmed with emotion, Douglas was asked how he pulled it off. His response was simple but powerful. Because of my mother. God bless her heart. After the fight, Tyson's promoter, Don King, wasn't ready to accept defeat. He argued that Douglas had been given a long count when he was knocked down in the 8th round and claimed Tyson should have won. But let's settle this once and for all. Tyson did not beat Buster Douglas. Yeah, Buster Douglas went down, but under the rules, it's the referee's count that matters, not the stopwatch. If the Marquis of Queensberry's rules were still being used, then maybe that might have been a violation. They state that the 10-second count starts from the moment the boxer hits the ground, but that's not what they were working with in 1990. Right now, we use the Association of Boxing Commission's rules, which support the referee given the count. The pace might be a little off, but it's the referee's count that matters at the end of the day. The same amount of time was given to Tyson when he hit the canvas in the 10th round. He just couldn't recover. Even if the fight had gone the distance, Tyson would have lost on points. Besides, it was obvious that Douglas wanted that win more. Tyson was dominated that night, plain and simple. Still, the controversy threw everything into chaos. The WBA and WBC initially refused to recognize Douglas as the champion, even though the IBF immediately acknowledged his win. But after a huge public outcry and pressure from boxing commissions around the world, the protest was dropped, and Douglas was officially crowned the undisputed heavyweight champion 4 days after the fight. But what was next for Tyson and Douglas? Tyson was already supposed to have another fight lined up. Don King had been negotiating a bout in Berlin against Greg Page, who had reportedly dropped Tyson in sparring just weeks before the Douglas fight. There were even talks of a mega fight against George Foreman, promoted by the Sultan of Brunei. But after Tyson's loss, those plans were scrapped. Instead, boxing fans wanted one thing: a rematch. But it never happened. Douglas's first and only title defense came against Evander Holyfield, the #1 contender. Unfortunately, Douglas came into the fight 14.5 pounds heavier than he was against Tyson and looked nothing like the man who shocked the world. Holyfield knocked him out in the 3rd round, and just like that, Douglas's time at the top was over. He retired soon after, but made a comeback 6 years later after nearly dying from a diabetic coma. He won a few fights against lower-level opponents before hanging up the gloves for good in 1999. Despite constant rumors throughout the 90s, he and Tyson never fought again. After the Douglas loss, Tyson fought 4 more times before his career took a dark turn. In 1991, he was convicted of raping beauty pageant contestant Desiree Washington and was sentenced to prison. After serving nearly 3 years, he returned to boxing in 1995, quickly regaining the WBA and WBC heavyweight titles.
But he has fought a perfect fight. No matter what happens from here to Vega, a left hook to the head. He's got Tyson in trouble. Tyson's ready to go. A straight hook. The champion stops the fight, and Holyfield has it. I can't believe what I'm seeing. It's the most unbelievable thing I've ever been privileged to witness. Mayhem.
But Tyson was never the same. He lost the belts to Evander Holyfield and never won a world title again. He continued fighting for another decade, even challenging Lennox Lewis for the heavyweight championship in 2002, but lost. By 2005, after back-to-back defeats against journeyman, Tyson retired, later admitting, "My career has been over since 1990. Douglas may have lost his title quickly, but at least he got paid. That one win set him up for life, and to his credit, he managed his money well. It was a fair game, but everything aligned for the underdog. Buster Douglas stepped into the ring with nothing to lose and fought the fight of his life. Tyson, unprepared and unfocused, crumbled under the pressure. For the first time ever, he was beatable. On the right night, under the right circumstances, anything can happen.